5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Not quite a jingle, but it'll have to do. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to another Twitch broadcast of Game Guru. The only game creator that lets you make a game in 60 seconds. And I can probably prove it too. So, we've been waiting for requests, what you wanted me to talk about on Wednesday, 4 PM. And the one that I actually quite like the look of is showing you how to manipulate the animation within characters using scripts, so you can actually control what they do and you're not beholden to what we decide that they should do, because there's lots more animation data in those characters than just the ones that you see when you drop a character and then press play. So I was quite interested in that, and I thought, yep, I can show you something like this. But it's quite an involved subject, not necessarily its understanding, but creating the script and the back end to be able to, you know, do something practical in just 30 minutes. So I'm going to have an attempt, and in order to help myself, I started the script off earlier, I must confess. Basically the format for this has always been live, unscripted and unrehearsed, with absolutely no preparation whatsoever. So it's really just off the cuff. It's live, spontaneous, casual, just so you can see what's happening as it's happening, and when it goes wrong, you know it's live, because it's not something you'd want to plan. But I was actually requested to put a little bit of planning into this, so I've actually put 20 minutes into playing around with the subject matter, and I've started a script. But I'm not just going to bombard you with a complete script, I'm actually going to comment it all out and actually show you. So without further ado, I want to show you what I've been creating over the last 20 minutes. So if I switch over to this, for those who are experiencing this broadcast for the first time, this is Game Guru. It allows you to make games very easily by dragging in assets and then pressing the big rocket, and then you can play your game. It's literally as easy as that. No programming required, no art skills required. However, if you wanted to do a bit of programming or a bit of art, then you by all means can do that. And so this broadcast will include a little bit of program to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to play my game. I wouldn't say it's a game, to be fair. It's really just a level with a couple of things dropped in, just so I can show you what you're looking at. So I'm just going to move past these bricks. And I bet that's a scene that you've not seen before. If you're familiar with Game Guru, you've probably played the two zombie games that come with the software, but you never saw a pause like that, and that's because it's one of the animations that is contained within the character but you never get to see. And I'm now going to show you a script on how I created that animation, and then we're going to go on and add to the script to do even more cool things. So I'm going to go to the script itself. So we've got Lua, as you know, is a global.lua. It's all the commands that you actually need to program with. And then you've got individual scripts which you can assign to entities. In this case, I've assigned it to the zombie. So you basically have two. You have an init, which is called for the first time, and then you've got main, which is looped over and over again, executing your program. And if you remember in the when I ran it, you had scan code and frame, and then some numbers. Well, that's that command that did it. It's prompt, then you can do some text and some numbers and some more text and some numbers, and that's why when you run it you can actually see that. But what I'm going to do, just to start things off nice and easy, is comment pretty much everything out except the two functions that are mandatory. And this might be a little bit long-winded, just to comment it all out. I'm sure there is a Lua command for mass commenting out blocks, but some of the commentary commands that I use haven't really been from C++, haven't really worked too well in this Lua syntax, so I tend not to use them. So if we save that and then run, essentially I've already assigned this script to the entity. I'll just show you that again in case you're a bit lost onto what's going on. So imagine if you just dropped in a zombie and then gave it a blank script, it would just sit there. It has no ability to attack you whatsoever. It's just a model that's been loaded in. It's obviously got some default animation, That's built into the entity itself. If we go to the editor, you can see there's a zombie, and we just dropped him in like so. We don't need to, so we'll delete that. And then when you go into the properties of the entity, you'll actually see it's been assigned AI_zombie_work.lua. That's the name of the script, which is what I'm actually editing here. So you can see how it all connects together. So the first thing we want to do is have control over the animation. But then once you've got the control, what are you going to do with it? You don't know the animations, you know? You don't know where the animations start or end or anything like that. So I'm going to show you, first of all, how to browse the animations within the model. Now, if you had an art package, like a 3D modeler such as Blender, you could just load in the model, and I'll show you where the model is, just for reference. If you go into Files, Entity Bank, Characters, Zombies, and then find the X files. So, for example, let's find... It won't particularly be this one. Let's say Zombie Clone. I'll load that into Asset Importer. I mean, this is just a browser, this, but you can actually play it like super fast. But again, not particularly useful. It's just to show that you actually do have animations. You would actually use something like Blender or something like that to actually step through the animations. But what I thought would be a really cool idea is that let's write something so you could step through the animations in context inside Game Guru. So, which is what this script is going to attempt to do. And for that, we need a few things. So first of all, you need to set the character in such a state that it stops running its default animation and is primed and ready to be manually controlled. So that would be these two instructions here. So character control limbo says turn the character into limbo state, which means it's not going to be walking about, it's not going to be doing its own default animation and idle stuff. It's complete limbo. It has no concept even of animations that it needs to play by default. And then, just in case it was playing something, just stop animation. And so if we save that and run, if you remember before where it was doing a little bit of an idle animation, this should get rid of it. No, it's not particularly getting rid of it. So I imagine either I've missed something or the later code actually overrides that. But stop animation, in theory, should have stopped it idling. But we're going to, maybe there's another command. But we'll see. For now, those are pretty sensible. I would expect them to work. So if it is a bug, it'll probably be something inside that command. But I should mention that this is pretty frontier stuff. We added these commands and it worked under the situations that we wanted them to work under. But as with all programming language, there's a million billion combinations as you start rearranging the commands and new scenarios get thrown up. As an example, this is probably one of those scenarios. So I'm going to continue undaunted by introducing this command back in, rotate to player. So remember the zombie was just facing the wall all the time. But now, when we run it, it's facing us. And as we move around him, it rotates to face. So we can see that our main loop is working and our zombie's tracking us wherever we go. And some more commands. We'll put the prompt back in so you can see scan code. Now that's a global variable. That what scan code is, when you press a key on your keyboard, it produces something called a scan code value, and you can pick that up, i.e. you can detect when a key's been pressed, not just a particular key but any key on the keyboard. And each key has a unique number, so once you know what that number is, you can detect its pressing and its when it's not pressed, of course. But because there's no big chart somewhere that can easily accessible, you can just print out the value and then do experiments. So if I saved that and then ran, because this is really where I started, because I thought, wouldn't it be great if I can step forwards and backwards through the animation within the software? So that's what. Obviously, I've missed something out. Oh yeah, I've not declared the global. So if we look at the code, you see what I'm using? AI zombie work my frame, but you have to declare that as a global. So you pop that in at the top. I'll put that one in as well, just so I don't have this scenario to see again. And if you do get a Lua error like that, you've typed something and it's wrong, just come out of the test game and then go back into it. At this stage, it will reload all the Lua scripts. So now that compiles and it runs fine. And you notice at the bottom of the screen you've got scan code and then frame equals 199. If I hold down space, not only am I jumping, which is a feature of the player mechanics, but scan code is now showing 57. That is the internal hardware value for the spacebar, 57. So if you do something like if scan code equals 57, you can now detect when somebody presses the spacebar. It's pretty cool. So now we've got that in, and we can see we've got all these different values based on my moving around. The two keys I'm interested in is the minus key, which is 12, the plus key, which is 13, and the backspace, which is 14, and the return key, or the enter key, which is 28. So if we go to our script, you'll actually see some logic that I was playing around with. If scan code is 0, then make this pressed value 0. You see I've declared that as a global up top. That will become evident a bit later. Whilst the pressed is 0, you're going to run everything inside here. And what we're going to run is some simple stuff. For example, if you press the plus key or the backspace key, you'll increment this value, my frame, by 1. If you press the minus key or the plus key, then you will set this pressed value to 1. And as long as the frame is greater than 0 and you press the minus key or the return key or the enter key, then you'll deduct a frame. You'll deduct a value from this value. And as you see, we're actually showing this value down here under frame. So if we click save and then run, in theory, nothing really much will happen. We've not issued any sort of really core engine commands. But look at the frame value 199. If I press the minus key, it makes it smaller. If I press the plus key, it makes it bigger. Now you notice I can hold down the plus key, like so, and it will only increment by 1. And that's because of the activity of that pressed value. As long as no key is being pressed, it's 0. As soon as you press a key, that value is set to 1. So the condition of is it 0 is no longer true. So you see, as soon as you press a key, you actually set it to 1. But the only way it can go back to 0 to allow you to increment and decrement again is to release everything from the key. That way you have to press to get your one instance of it, then release to reset that to 0, then you can do it again and again and again. But because there may be thousands of animation, then you want to be able to scroll very quickly through. So backspace doesn't set the pressed value to 1, which means it can rocket up the frames, and the return or enter key does the opposite. And you can go all the way back to the beginning, and it stops at 0 because the deduction code only happens if the frame is greater than 0. So thus ends the programming lesson 101. And the last value I'm going to comment in, I'm going to leave that out because we don't really need to deal with states at this stage. Maybe we won't have time to show that. But this is the one, this is the magic. I really could have boiled this whole 13 minutes of introduction into literally 20 seconds, which is if you want to control the animation of your characters using a script, the command is called set animation frame, which is passing in the entity value and the frame of animation that you want to set. And also you've got to ensure that you stop the animation. Even though it's sort of still idling, I think that's very important that that is issued before the set animation frame. But I'm going to do some research into that after this broadcast. So now with that commented back in and saved, we can run our little demo. And let's see if anyone can guess what's going to happen when I do the plus and minus key. Already you've seen something's different. What's actually happened is that frame 199 that's stored inside the model is now being set, which just happens to be that strange pose. Now if I do minus, you can actually see where it came from. This is a sort of climbing ladders animation from 150 to 170 something. If we skip past that using the plus key, you'll see, there it is, that is the 191. That's the first frame of a sequence that's going to allow this whatever it is, the characters had a special sort of spawn in animation where they would materialise out of nowhere and then land on the ground and start attacking. That's a default animation that all the legacy characters, I should say, should have. And the zombies, all the zombies in Game Guru, are what I call legacy characters, which differ from Uber characters, which are a new generation of character models that we're developing, which has better quality, better textures, better animations, etc. But we still have access to these older models if you wanted to use them, and zombies certainly qualify. So 191, you can press the plus key to go through and see where it gets to the end. Looks like not that one, but that one, yeah. So it goes from 191 to 208. So you can imagine we've now created a system where you can browse very quickly the animation frames in any object that you drop in by applying the script and then using your plus and minus. Because it doesn't really matter whether it's a zombie or whether it's a piece of machinery or a vehicle or whatever it is, you can actually step through all the animations. And with this information, armed with this information, you can then do some really cool things. For example, let's say now I know it's, and I'm going to write it down because this is where, you know, pen and paper still has a meaning in the world. So I'm going to write down 191 to 208, and I'm going to write underneath that that is the spawn. And now what I can do is, I just wanted to make a point that you don't really want to be controlling your animation with set animation frame, set animation frame, set animation frame, because it would be jumping whole frames. It'd probably look quite strange. You really want to use the animation system, but use this set animation frame to discover which frames of animation you want to use. So if we come out, and we're going to add another variable. Now this is going into unknown territory. This is where my pre-prepared script ends, and we go into new wonderful things. So if we said mode equals 1, like that, and then everything that we did about manipulating this, we really want that in mode 0. Let's call mode 0 the editing mode, yeah? So if we do, if this mode is 0, then do a comment, we can edit the frame. No, edit's the wrong word. We can browse the entity animation frames. Yeah, I've been typing fast, so that's why you got some typos. And then what we could say is, if the variable is 1, then we can do something cool. So the cool thing I am thinking of is triggering that animation. And now we know what the values are, we can have a bit of fun. So it would be, it's two commands. It's called set animation frames. Remember, it was 191 to, what was it, 208. And then we want to loop animation like so. But now it's going to keep calling that over and over and over, and I have no idea what it's going to do. But because I'm morbidly curious, I'm going to run it and see if I find out what it does. Now remember, we've set the mode to 1 in the global, so it starts off as 1. It won't be able to edit anymore, and it's going to do that loop over and over and over. And as I suspected, because it's constantly calling it, it's not getting an opportunity. See, we're not leaving it alone. It's doing loop from the beginning, loop from the beginning, loop from the every single cycle. It has no chance to get through its loop sequence. So we need some way to just trigger it once and then leave it alone. Now, I could do another variable like a stage or a state value, but just to keep things quick and easy, I will set the mode, which was currently set to 1 as a global, set it to 2, so it only triggers this once. In theory, you would then see the zombie spawn over and over and over again. Yes, it's nice when it actually works. So there you go. We identified what the start and end frames were using our script, and then we augmented our script to then trigger this loop animation. And I just want to show you another command which will be very useful to you when you want to take fine-grained control of the animations of your entity, and that's to control its speed, because that's very important too. And as you can almost guess now, set animation speed E, comma, whatever the speed is. Now I can't remember what the default, whether it's 100 or 1. I think it's 100. So if we set it to 10, given the speed at which we saw it before, we'll know whether we've divided it by 10 or multiplied it by 10. Because the default, I think, is 100. No, I think the default is 10. Let Does that look faster to you? Well, let's set it to something really small then. Oh, and before we do that, let's just make sure that that even is a command. So if we go to global and search for it, yeah, and confirm the variables are okay. Set animation speed, E, V, yeah, all that's fine. So those are 2 variables. We've set the speed to 1, save, run. There's another possibility I'm chewing over, in that something's overriding the animation speed. Which is why when you trigger it once, it doesn't matter because something else triggered it afterwards. And so animation speed is not being set at all. If we change the animation speed so it's called all the time, let's see if that helps. Again, sometimes when you're programming, the meanings of why things aren't working isn't immediately apparent. And in the case of this, that's 2 little mysteries now. 1, then we set stop animation in the init, why was it still idling? And 2, why is it when I issue set animation speed in the core loop that it actually continues to run at exactly the same speed? So these are great questions. I've noticed set animation speed, remember I always like to cut and paste, so I've actually left the old code underneath. But you see, I've actually just left these globals which aren't used anymore, and then these I've changed all the function names. So there's no possibility of these are being called. But what I have noticed is that set animation speed is actually taking a float, which suggests to me that is the default. And maybe it's capping it as well. I mean, it shouldn't cap it, but I just had a little epiphany. What if it's a float and the default is 1? And so I've never really set it to more than 1. So what if I set it to 0.1? No, let's divide it by 100. I'm just going to call it all the time. Let's see what happens with that. So if the default is 1 and I've set it to 0.01, it should be 100 times slower. Does that work? No. Okay. I suspected as much because an integer can actually be passed in to a float variable, no problem at all. So I'm going to put a big question mark on that to be looked at later. But yeah, in theory, and definitely we are actually imminent for an update, so I'm definitely going to fix this for you. So on the let's say the 20th of November or thereabouts, you'll be able to do this and it will work. And it probably does work. This command should work. It's just for some reason there's a particular mode it's probably sitting in, which means it's not actually doing what it's supposed to do. But I need to move on. We can't really dwell on that. But controlling animation speed is also pretty cool. You can do lots of great things with that. So what I want to show you now is how you can turn this into something practical. So if we run it again, let's comment this out so we don't get confused by it. Once you've actually interrogated your model and you've written down all the frames of animation that you like, the next thing is to actually have it in your game so it triggers meaningfully. Like say you know when you get close to something, it will actually appear out of nowhere. So for this particular case, let's say that ring there is some sort of magical ring and it's protected by a demon, a big fat zombie demon. And so when you get close enough to it, it will actually run this sort of spawn animation, and then it will revert to a more standard intelligence which has built-in stuff for walking, which I'm going to show you a little bit. So effectively we start at mode 1. Remember mode 0 was editing and finding the frames. Mode 1 is sort of, let's call it limbo. So we really want to hide it, don't we, first? We don't really want to tip our hand, really. Now, there may be a command called hide. I hope there is. Hide. We want to hide the object. Yeah, there it is. Just hide E. Cool. So when you start, I'm going to hide it. And now when we run our game, it shouldn't even be visible. Shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't. Yes. So it's still animating, it's still doing all the things you saw before, it's just we can't see it because we just switched it off, switched its visibility off, it's still there. So what we want to do is have some sort of proximity thing. Now fortunately, thanks to the magic of cut and paste, I can speed up my typing a little bit by saying, if you're in mode 1, which is sort of waiting mode, and you detect the player's distance, which is get player distance, and that distance is less than, say, how big that ring was, maybe it was about 100. So if you're actually less than 100, then boom, do something. And I think what we should do is set the animation up for the spawn, not loop but play. So it just plays it once. We set that mode to 2, and all important, we've got to show the entity. So let's see what happens. I think what it does, it plays the whole animation, it stops on the final frame. But what we're going to see is when we get close, it needs to show up, it needs to animate, it needs to stop at the end. That's what we're hoping for. So when we get within 100 units of... Yeah, great. Actually, I was expecting all sorts of horrible things, so I had to start explaining why it wasn't going to work. But yeah, it's brilliant. So, great, but it's not really as... It's just staring at you. It's the most ineffective defense mechanism ever. You want to turn him into an actual zombie, and it's going to start charging after you. And in addition to the manual control of animations and entities, all characters have a built-in AI system, which allows you to hand over the animation, the movement, things like that, to an internal AI system. And I'm going to show you how to activate that. So, but you don't want to activate it right away. You want to give the script time for the animation to finish playing. So the best way to know when that's finished is to actually say, when have you finished all them animations? So I remember we actually set mode to 2, and now we're actually, let's call that the playing the spawn bit. And now you want to check, well, when is it finished? Now there's no such thing as, get animation finished. Although it's probably a good idea to actually add a command like that. What we're going to do is something a bit more raw. Get animation frame. But before I dwell on how clever that command is, let's see if it even exists. I think it does. Alright, so it doesn't exist. So if we go to our old code, it should have the ability to detect. Yeah, it actually does exist. Okay, I think what I did is when you search, there's up and down, isn't there? So you have to go down. There it is. So there is a command, get animation frame, and we're going to set that here. And now we're going to see if it gets to greater or equal to 20. Let's say 7, just in case it actually floats around at 207.9999. So if it's greater or equal to 207, we've got to pretty much 97% of the end of the frame. End of the animation, sorry, and then we can actually do something different. Well, obviously we're going to move on to the next mode, which is mode 3, so we're not having to do this over and over again. But then there's a new command. It's basically the character control limbo. Remember that command? Well, there's another one which puts it back into, super AI aggressive mode. There it is. Character control unarmed will tell the character, you are now a regular AI character, do your thing. I know what animations that you need for walking and stuff. I have that information already. I'm just going to set you into that mode. And that's what this is. Character control unarmed, and you set it to 3. And this mode is becoming quite a useful value. So it's always a good idea to keep some debug information floating around. So this double dot thing is what's called a concatenator. So you can add strings to values to strings and so on and so forth. But make sure your concatenator symbol is used. Otherwise your script will fail to compile. And we'll see that then, yeah, my classic. I'm always forgetting those thens. I should really have a piece of electricity wired up, so if it ever produces that error, I get a little electrical shock, then I'd be much more vigilant. So hopefully that will compile the shader. And remember, we've got mode of 1 to start off with. You can see that now, mode equals 1 at the end, bottom. And as we get closer, it runs its animation spawn in it. Dink. Now, wow, did you see that? It actually went straight to 3. Now, why would it do that? Well, it could be because it didn't know what the frame was. And that's one thing to mention about this command, get animation frame. It can't get the animation frame immediately. It needs to have a command to issue the instruction for the engine to provide that frame, and then you'll get it a little bit later. Now, if I can remember what the command was, it's probably get animation frame, loop, modulate speed, blah blah blah. Yeah, I can't see it, and my mind escapes me. So I'm going to take the opportunity to say that under ideal scenarios, get animation frame E is greater than 207 will definitely work for you. It could be that at a time it's some greater than 208, and then as it goes in, play animation doesn't do it straight away, and then when you go to this one, it's actually greater for some reason, and then it goes straight to there. So what I'm going to show you is an alternate way, which is using timers. Timers is really easy. It's just start timer and get timer. So the way that we can do it in another way is when you start triggering the animation, which is this, just do start timer, and then instead of that condition, I'll keep it commented in because I want to find out later what that's about. You can get timer if it's greater than, say, what should we say? It lands and takes half a second. Now we've got to enter the parameter in milliseconds. So 500 is half a second. And then after half a second, then it can actually do the next two things. So now what we're going to do is run. Then another electrical shock, please. Okay, we'll save. Come out of that. Remember, when you change your script and save, you have to come out your test game and then go back in, because it needs to load in the script fresh, and preferably without syntax errors. So now you've got mode equals 1. Go straight to 3, and then we're all generally confused. So what I'm going to do is comment that out. Use a brute force, and then what I'm going to do is get to timer, and I'm going to watch that timer. So timer equals this. Right. It seems brute force, but sometimes you do have to step back and take things one small step at a time to actually understand where your logic error lies. And even after you've been programming for 20 years, you still have to almost slow down a little bit. Right, so you can see already, look at that. Timer is this huge value. We expected it to be like, 0 and then 500 after half a second, but that's a little bit bigger than half a second. Right, so it does work, but start timer, as you can see, only kicks in there, which is why it reset it. So let's do something really simple. Let's say if timer is greater than, say, 5,000, and we don't do anything until 5 seconds, and then we set that to 3. Okay, let's try that one. Yeah, you see it's mode 3 almost immediately, which is very odd indeed. Mode 2 is set there. Get time is greater than 500. I know what it might be. It's running straight in, isn't it? It's running straight in. Start timer hasn't set it to 0. It's still this massive value, and that's why it's going straight to 3. So you could actually set another value, which actually makes sure it's reset before it does it. But a quicker way, it's a bit hacky, is only ever done the next cycle. So a quick way of doing it is, are you mode 1? There, yes. Well, if you're not, and you must be 2, you see what happens? It'll do start timer, then it has to skip that because it jumps off the else, but the next time round, mode is 2, and then it can go into there. So now we're going to run that. In theory, you have to wait 5 seconds before the end of the spawn. So we go to there. Yeah, brilliant. And then 5 seconds later, it should run the, yeah, it goes to the AI system, which is now attempting to wave at me. Very effective way of attacking me. So we'll put that back to half a second, which is what we wanted in the first place. And then once we're on 3, we can start doing crazy cool things, which will be in a couple of minutes. But first of all, we just want to make sure that we're not spawning and then waiting a very long time. We just want a nice quick punch. So we move near. Yes, there you go. So it goes straight into mode 3. But the right now is not really doing much. his instructions aren't clear. His instructions basically just stand there, and if it happens to have some sort of grenade or something, then it can actually wave a grenade in your direction. But what we really want is to have him move towards us, and there's a command for that. So as you can see, when you're on mode 3, he's now in, let's call him attack mode, and now we want him to do clever things. Now, as part of the AI system, it knows how to navigate around obstructions like those bricks, because you wouldn't really want to start writing a script to do raycasting and pathfinding and nav meshes and stuff like that. We've done all that for you in the background. So all you have to do is one command, which is called AI Entity Go To Position, which plugs straight into our current AI system. So you're actually issuing a core command here. It's pretty cool. But you notice the parameter isn't an entity, it's an object number. So the AI entity command group needs object numbers. Unfortunately, thanks to the beauty of cut and paste, we're not going to get that wrong. We just copy it in, and you see how you get the entity object number is there's a global array called g_entity. We use the entity index, and you can get a field from it. So each entity has lots of values, and one of the values is called obj, which stores a value, and that's the value that this command needs. And you put it in there, and we'll get rid of these extras. So these are the globals, just like the scan code global. You've got player pos X and player pos Y. Those are the actual runtime, real-time position of the player on the X and the Z axis of your world. So you're basically giving instructions to the zombie, go to the player. And I bet you're thinking, well, that's all well and good, but how do I control the walking and stuff like that? Well, the character already knows how to walk. It has that information built in. So the AI just takes advantage of that knowledge, and then it overrides the animation. That was the character control unarmed. When you switch away from Limbo, you give animation control back to the AI system. So now when we move into the field, jumps in, and then it's going to move to wherever I am. And as I move around these obstacles, you see, it's not walking through a crate, it's going to walk round it. You see? So that's our AI at work. And then we've got a zombie, and it starts trying to attack me. But of course, here's the thing. We haven't told him, you know, what happens with the attack. He'll move to me, and when he's near me, then he'll start doing this sort of default attack. So the sort of a low-level intelligence. Even when you don't tell them what to do, they have like this dumb brain, and that's for kind of any character. They will try and get as close to you and then start clubbering you. But obviously, you're not telling how much. You know, we need the script to say how much damage and things like that. So that's where it comes in. So what you might want to do is when the character actually gets to you, rather than use this dumb AI backup, you can actually then override it with something very specific, something that you actually want it to do. So, for example, when you get near enough, then maybe freeze the player and then run a particular animation, and then control the elements of that encounter, which is what we're going to attempt to do. I'm just checking my clock. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I think I have time to show you this, because I think it's a really good conclusion to what we've done so far. So we already have a variable for know how close the player is here. So during the attack, so remember, you're always walking toward the player. As soon as the player gets within so much distance, now I actually don't know what that might be. So how about this for a really cool idea? We get rid of the prompt because that's served its purpose for now. And when we're in attack mode, we give ourselves a look at what that player distance is. Yeah? That way, we're not going to be too surprised when we keep entering different values and it doesn't apparently do what we want it to do, on the basis that the value wasn't big enough or small enough. So we're going to go right up to him. We're going to walk towards a little bit and see what kind of distance. Now, is it currently at 99? And it's still at 99. Why? Well, obviously it's not updating the value. Why is it not updating the value? Well, look, it's inside mode 1. See, we only put it in there. So if we put it in there, it's now live and in colour. So let's try that. And it's always a good idea to, put all your code into places where it's only called when it's absolutely required. So you're executing as few instructions per cycle as possible. It will make your game faster. So we move back. So notice this is the where are we at? Oh, it got all the way to 46, 47, 46. These are really close. Okay, let's say if it's less than 50, he can do his thing, yeah? So we've got a value now. So we'll reinstate this condition. If you're less than 50, then we probably want to do some special thing now. In order so we're not constantly moving as well, we'll now move to 4, which we'll call, I don't know, what should we call it? Like a bite? And what does zombies do? I don't know. I never met one. So zombie eats brain or something. And so as soon as you get within 50, boom. So we want to do a few things as well. What would be great if we can freeze the player so the player doesn't run off during the attack, right? You're in zombie sort of freeze attack. So if we've got a command for freeze, yeah, we do. Freeze player, it takes no parameters. So we freeze the player and it goes to 4. And as you remember, we can do clever things now with our animation. So just as before, we use these 2 commands, which sets it back to limbo, and then stop any animations that may have been playing. Again, we're going to have a quick look at that later on. But also, we want to run some kind of animation. Now we know the command for that, set animation frames, something to something else, and then maybe loop an animation. You know, brain eating animation, you could argue. But here's the thing, we don't really know what those 2 values are, which is why you'd actually go back to mode 0 so you can step through. So just to make things easier on me, I'm just going to assume that if that is the, you know, landing in the sky, no, actually I think we will actually browse some animation, see if we can find a nice animation sequence. If I set that to 0, and provided I've not introduced any half-baked code that's going to crash us, no, we'll look okay. Then we can run it. And it compiled and run, which is great. And now, yeah, we'd need to show it, wouldn't we? Otherwise, I mean, it's working, but we can't see. We can't see anything. So we just have to show it when we go to mode 0. It's always showing the entity. And then we can see what we're doing. It should start at 199. That's, I think, the default frame. But you can actually go lower. So let's say when the zombie gets near you, maybe he eats your belly button. I don't know. Because he's about that close, isn't he, when he actually attacks. So what would be a good frame of animation? Okay. So let's say he starts there. So what frame would that be? Well, we don't know, do we? Because we actually hidden those prompts. So we'll just reactivate those and run again. But yeah, I've actually seen a couple of frames animation which look quite good. So we're going to use those. But of course, you can explore all the animations in the character. Oh dearie me, where's my prompty thing? It's there. So why is not? Oh, I know why it is. That is my cut and paste stuff, isn't it? It's supposed to be up here somewhere. There it is. Save, run this. So now we've got all our stuff back, including the frame value, which is 199. Remember we was looking for that really cool... Nope. So you've landed. And then... that's just an idle animation, we don't really want that. Maybe his arms go up, so it's 196, and then he goes crunch. 196 to 206. Okay, so we'll try that. So 196 here, 206 here, and then we loop. So in theory, I mean, it's going to look a bit odd, but obviously you're going to pick a better animation than that, and it will just keep eating your brain over and over and over, and the play's frozen, and that's the end of the game. So let's say you had one life with no health, and you only had to be touched by a zombie and you'd lost. So maybe that is the game. Obviously, we're going to set our global mode back to 1 because, well, we're not browsing the animation frames anymore, are we? So we're going to have a look. We get close. He jumps. He walks towards us. He's on mode 3 at the moment. We freeze ourselves, and see, I'm moving my mouse, my keyboard. I can't move at all now. And because of that, he's having a field day. Obviously, you'd have some really clever animation for eating brains. But there's another thing you can do, actually. It's pretty cool. Let's say you had a very specific animation that required the player camera to be in a very certain position before that animation could be played. And it just so happens this zombie does have such an animation, where it grabs sort of the ears of the player and then proceeds to munch the brains, as it were. And in order to do that, you would have to move the entity into its correct position. You'll often see that in some games where you walk up to an object and then you press E to activate or something, and then miraculously the player, if you're a third-person character, sort of moves, so it aligns itself with whatever the object is to press a button or open the door or something like that. Well, you can do it the other way around as well. And you can do that by actually changing the position of the entity, which I think we can do. If we look for a command, set position, or just the word position, or the word position looking down the global list. Yeah, here it is. Entity, then you can set a position. You can also set a rotation as well, which can be very useful because we do have globals to control the player's position. So you get the inverse of the player's rotation, and that can be used to set the position and rotation of the entity. Now, I've already forgotten what it was with all my rambling. Right, set position. E is the entity number, and then the position, well, we're going to use the player, like so. And obviously we need a Y. Where would we get the Y coordinate from? Do we have the Y coordinate for the player? Can we get the Y coordinate? It looks like we can't. But I'm going to show you another little trick. You probably can, but I haven't got the time really to go and explore. But look at this lovely little hack. If you really wanted to get down and dirty with Lua, you don't have to actually require all the XYZ. You can actually go into the command itself, break out the low level stuff, and just set the X and Z, leave the Y alone. So wherever the Y was, it leaves it exactly in the same place. So that puts the zombie right on top of the player, but that's no good, isn't it? Because you actually want the entity, the zombie in this case, to be in front of the player. So essentially, you're going to have to start creating some math now. Now, the way I would do it is I would have something like a new X equals the cosine of, say, the player's Y multiplied by 50, and the same for the Z. That would be the sine, like that, and then you would add that to new X and new Z, and so player Y, you need to get that from the top of the global thing. We dumped all the player things together. There it is. So player angle Y is the angle that the player is currently facing. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking the player's position, the direction the player is facing, then you're drawing an invisible line out 50 units, and then you're going to get the X and Z offset, which represents that new coordinate when you follow that vector 50 units out. And then you apply that value, the offset, to the player position to find the new position of the entity. It's that simple. Well, maybe not that simple, but it's that logical. So obviously the cosine's a bit funny. So the zombie might just suddenly appear behind me, but we're going to find out. So he'll come walking towards me, and then he'll move. No, he won't. He'll crash on me. Attempt to call global cos. Yeah, there's no such command as cos. And you see, player's frozen. So that's not the crash, of course. That's the command we issued. Go go back, we can actually see freeze player. That's what that was about. Obviously, you'd have some more code to break free. Maybe you got to do like press E repeatedly. Oh, oh thanks, Wormer. As you know, this is a live broadcast, so we have a chat running alongside with questions and stuff. And every now and again, people can help me out if I get stuck. And someone has. A guy called Wormer has posted the correct command in Lua for doing the code. And it's not code on its own, it's math.co and math.sign. So 1,000 thank yous for that. Fingers crossed. Will this do the trick? If it compiles, the answer is yes. If it doesn't compile, yes, it compiles, it works, hooray! So we're going to trigger him, move back a bit, let him walk towards us, and let's see where he repositions to. He repositions seemingly nowhere. So that is very interesting, all by itself. So I'm looking at the clock, we've only got like a couple of minutes left. So I would say, in theory, setting the position of the entity to this plus that will actually yield the result that you want. And I'm not satisfied just to leave it at that because we still have a couple of minutes and I'm going to use it. So where are we? Are we stuck in it? No, we're stuck in 4, aren't we? So what we'll do, we'll move all this into here so we can repeatedly call it. And also the benefit is we can actually show it, show our maths. So all I'm really interested in right now is the new X and new Y. Find out if they're actually what we need or not. And then it's that one, and then we want the other one, which is new Z equals concatenate that. So now we should be able to see what we're actually pushing out. And also I'm quite interested to know what the player X and... No, I'm not. I'm pretty... No, actually I'm curious. I want to at least know that that value is... got some cool value in it. Of meaning. And I'm going to run it. Hopefully I haven't missed out any thens. So we've got Ravy in the house moderating. At least I hope we have. I think we have. Ravy, if you could scour the chat for any questions and then repost them at the bottom. Because I think I have a couple of minutes to answer a few. Because I've really just been staring at the main screen. I've not been looking at the chat. Much to my horror and disappointment. But yeah, if you can just find any question marks and then repeat them for me, and then that'd be great. So let's see what happens. Right, yeah, that changed position, didn't it? So you got new X of 26, which moves it in the... Let me think about the orientation here. I'm facing that way, which is actually that way. Minus 42, and there's 25,000 on the X. Yeah, so those coordinates should be absolutely fine. So the best way to test this is to run it again, but actually run at him from the other direction. And then it should actually appear, it should still appear in front of us. So we could dink dink, and then what I'm going to do is me back to him. Oh, he's not there. Schwein. Okay, so send the set position X, set position Y. Why is he not working? I don't know. I have no idea. But brain mode is 4. Let's reinstate that prompt. All those values are fine. So if we go back to here and go to position, what other kinds of lovely position commands do we have? We have reset position. It might be reset position, and do you know why? Because it's a physics-based creature. It has a capsule that allows it to, you know, not go through other objects. You know, set position is probably done, you know, before you spawn him. So given that, if we do reset position X, reposition X, and Z, I think that resets the physics as well. So whilst that's loading, all questions have been mostly answered in the chat. This is what Ravy's writing on the chat right now. There is one from Mike though. Could we get these nifty scripts posted to the forum for us to play with? Well, I wouldn't call it nifty. Bodged might be the better word. But absolutely, if you want this script, I can definitely post it. And if you want to know where it is, oh, that was encouraging. There you go, you see. Now we know we've actually got the cosine actually reversed. So yeah, I'll actually post the script in the same post that you used to request what you want to watch. So that's on our main Game Guru website. Go to the product chat and there's a sticky at the top called Twitch. And inside there you'll find an attachment which will have this script in precisely 10 minutes. So I'll do that for you, no problem. Rick, who's one of our team members, asked if we could show a zombie pic of yourself. Rick, I deleted it. It was absolutely disgusting, and it would frighten small children. And it was probably quite Freudian, actually. It was a bit scary, too close to, you know, holding the mirror up like a Dorian Gray sort of image of myself. I don't really want to put that image out, so I'm sorry, no. No one gets to see the zombified version of Lee, at least from this source. Rick, if you want to go and spread it all over the internet, then that's your choice and your prerogative. There's nothing I can do about it. But it literally freaked me out, that... And what I'm talking about is there's an app which can turn any photograph into a zombie. And it's pretty scary. So... maybe it'll go into some more zombies. Maybe all our team members will become zombies in a future version of Game Guru, but not today. So we know that works, but we've got the axes a bit ruffled. So if we do -50 instead of 50, it will do the opposite vector. So let's see if that does it. Any more questions? Because we've only got literally 2 minutes left. And quick question: in order to place some dead or unconscious character, do I need the whole entity script? I'll just make a script starting the frame to be displayed. Yeah, if you just want a character and then have him on the floor unconscious, then the very beginning of this broadcast showed you how to set the frame and just leave that frame alone, just constantly calling set animation frame. So once you frame the frame number, just keep setting that in a script that does nothing but set that frame value, and then the character will just stay on the floor dead. So that's how you would do that. So let's see what happens. Where does the entity move now? Ah, it's still not gone. Alright, so yeah, we're literally a minute left. But in theory, once these values are correct, and you actually got the proper offset, and you apply them to the player position, and then you can actually change the position of the entity, and then you can actually have the entity lock on the player whilst it's frozen to do brain munching time. And then after a brain munch session, then the zombie will release, and then you can run around with whatever health you've got left. So like I said, I'm going to post AIZombieWork.lua on the thread that I mentioned earlier. I don't think there's any more questions. Ravi's just confirmed that's all the questions. I don't understand. Oh, here's one from Wormer. I don't understand vector math. I don't understand how that cosine trick is getting a direction. Can you show us a quick math lesson sometime? Sure. Yeah, I can actually do it a quick 30-second lesson. Okay. So you've literally got your player position. Let's say this green thing is your player position, and this brick here is the zombie. If you actually set it to the player's actual position, it would be here. But what we wanted is the zombie to be like here, facing the player, you see. So in this particular case, the offset along the X, which is the horizontal, let me get me thing back. Let's just use another one. So this is your X, and then this is your Z, right? So really we wanted a maths which said, don't change the Z at X, but change the Z to like -50, which would put it around here. And what Core does, it takes the angle, which is like this, and it actually gives you a value from -1 to +1, which will actually say, you know, if it was like pointing there, it would actually be +1 on the X and 0 on the Z. So it would actually give you the offset when you multiply it by 50. If it was there, then it would actually be, the core would reduce 0, and then the sign would produce -1. So -1 times 50 would be -50, and that would place it here. So that's how it works. So if you want more explanation of cosine, I'm happy to make a whole broadcast dedicated to it. It's a great subject. You do lots of things with it in the 3D world. But for now, I've noticed the clock has just eaten up. The zombie has eaten up the time in this broadcast. So I hope you enjoyed it. It will be resuming next Wednesday at 4 PM. So if you fancy more gabby stuff from me, or you want a nice sensible broadcast from Ravy, then please post in the forum, ask what you want, and then we'll do our best to oblige. But until then, I shall say goodbye and have a good rest of week.